Hi, it's Dana, and I'm here with your divination for the new moon solar eclipse in sidereal Aquarius. The 2026 sidereal astrology guide says, revealing myself to myself. Break down. If you can't hold it, let it hold you. Let it carry you. When you've done all that you know. I am always very excited to do a podcast episode when it's eclipse season. Mostly because it is one of the astrological phenomena that I find very visceral, very literal, very present. Its themes are impossible to ignore in terms of making connections in our personal lives and collectively uh, using like tropical versus sidereal. I feel like the sidereal framework and the sidereal calculation are incredibly crystal clear and visceral. You just can't not see it. So let's go back to about a year ago, and it is one of the first posts on my Instagram page where I made a carousel listing out the themes for the sidereal Leo and Aquarius eclipses. And this is the series that this eclipse that we are upon now is a part of. Hold on, I'm gonna pull up the post so I can be real specific. Real specific. Okay, so this graphic says 2025 through 2027. So that is the time frame we will be experiencing these sidereal Aquarius and Leo eclipses in. And it says Aquarius, Leo eclipses, whose vision determines what you see. The subsequent slides go on to list themes that we will be dealing with. Mind you, this was posted, it says March 18th, 2025. Privacy and surveillance is the first slide, because I think that that is the most prominent and the most obvious and important theme of eclipses that we're in now. Next is being known versus being seen, invisibility versus visibility, erasure and humiliation, being ignored versus being perceived, dissociation or hubris, and self-determination versus self-respect, self-knowledge and self-awareness. And then the dates for these eclipses: March 14th, 2025 was the first in this series, and that was a full moon lunar eclipse at 29 degrees Leo. The second was September 7th, 2025, and that was a full moon lunar eclipse in sidereal Aquarius. Here we are at the third eclipse in this series. It is the only new moon solar eclipse in this series. It's February 17th, 2026, and it is at 4 degrees of sidereal Aquarius. I'll pause there and we'll talk about the rest of these on the next episode. But I want to make a quick note that the last time we were in a series of eclipses in sidereal Aquarius and Leo was 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018. The one that you should remember is the August, I believe it was like 21st of 2017, and that was a new moon solar eclipse. It was a total solar eclipse that was visible here in the United States. The eclipse that we're having on the 17th is 180 degrees opposed that eclipse degree. I want to dive into what sidereal Aquarius is really about. And if you have the 2026 Sidereal Astrology Guide, either the printed version or the PDF, you can see this page here, which has some tidbits about sidereal Aquarius according to the Divination for Liberation system. Aquarius is the conceptualizer, and that is about two things primarily. Aquarius is a fixed sign, so it's about identity. How do I know who I am? Who must I be to survive? Okay. And then it uses the tool here of imagination. So you can even see that listed here. We have the tool and the task. The task is identity, and it's using the imagination to do that. So, how do I conceptualize identity? Of course, this can manifest in a lot of other ways. Aquarius can be very technical minded, engineering minded. I know quite a few people who have sidereal Aquarius, Mercury, or Sun who have a very great technical aptitude, whether that is in mechanical engineering, electronics, civil engineering. um, Virgo tends to be more the coding and the computer science side of technology. Not to say that Aquarius is not that, but Aquarius as the conceptualizer is how do I imagine something into existence? And the primary way we imagine something into existence is through language. Okay. The gift of sidereal Aquarius and Divination for Liberation, sidereal astrology, is self determination. And self determination is really about shutting out external sources of identity. Most importantly, Aquarius speaks to us about this question, and this is a larger theme of these eclipses in sidereal Leo and Aquarius, which is which version of me is the real me? It is the me is it the me that exists in the minds of other people? And because of that, I need to manage the version of me that exists inside the minds of other people if I want to be the self that is most authentic. It means that I need to make sure that the version of me that exists inside the minds of other people is matching that. That's what Leo would say. Aquarius, though, with the gift of self determination, says, at this new moon eclipse, revealing myself to myself, it's saying that, hey, while the version of you that exists in the minds of other people might be real, what about the version of you that exists in your own mind? What about the version of you that is conjured up from your own imagination? And this is where these like ideas about sanity come into play as a Saturn ruled sign that Aquarius is. I define sanity as ignoring what we have collectively agreed to ignore and paying attention to that which we have collectively agreed to pay attention to. That means sanity is a social construct whose definition changes over the course of time, culturally, historically. Sanity is not this fixed thing that you can broadly apply across all cultures and across all times. There are places on this planet right now where it is not necessary to pay attention to your body odor. There are some places in this world where having body odor due to not bathing regularly is a norm. But there are places where not bathing regularly is seen as a sign of mental illness or some form of quote insanity. That if you're not paying attention to your body odor, it means that you are not paying enough attention to the version of you that exists inside the minds of other people. Why would you want a stinky version of you to exist in the minds of other people? That's a really surface um, example. But I think when it comes to identity, what we're really talking about is race, gender, and class. We're talking about, as a Black woman in America in 2026, what are the consequences of me not being privy to and aware of the version of myself that exists inside the minds of white people? When people talk about the white gaze or the male gaze, they're really saying there's your subjective experience, awareness, and knowledge of yourself. That is valid. But if you want to survive, you better know how white people perceive you broadly as a social group, and specifically when you encounter individual white people in public, on the job, etc. As a Black person, if you want to survive, you need to study and get your dissertation in how do white people perceive Black people? What do they think about me? Because in these power hierarchies or social hierarchies of identity, not recognizing, valuing, and properly assessing the white gaze is the difference between hunger and starvation, prison and freedom, and life and death. The same thing goes for me as a woman. I had better have a PhD in how men perceive me, because the social hierarchy of gender makes them have power to dominate me, often without consequence. So I better internalize the male gaze. Now, the flip side of that is when we want access to the power of whiteness, when we want access to the power of maleness, whether or not those are our identities, right? We internalize those gazes and they become a part of our internal narrative of self, of our self-worth, and of our value. But the gift of self-determination that sidereal Aquarius offers, and I want you to remember this, that signs in this system are experiences. So if you have that sign occupied in your birth chart, in this case, Aquarius, it's saying Aquarius is describing your lived experience in your life, right? That has given you tools to use to meet the challenges of life. When you do not have that sign occupied in your birth chart, it means that that has not been your lived experience as an individual. But collectively, we cyclically, is that how you say that? Uh, have transits through Aquarius, which means we collectively have the experience of Aquarius. So we can think back to Nat Turner and the Nat Turner Rebellion. It was an eclipse in sidereal Aquarius that signaled to him that it was time to do some slave rebelling. Because Aquarius, as the sign of self-determination, is giving us permission, and it is necessary for our survival to not have our sense of self completely consumed with how we are perceived by other people and the version of us that live inside the minds of other people. If you don't have any air signs occupied in your birth chart, that means you don't have any sidereal Gemini, Aquarius, or Libra. It can mean that it's very, very, very hard for you to access the gift of self-determination, and your worth and your value and your sense of self is irrevocably tied to how other people perceive you. And you're preoccupied with managing other people's perception of you. You may perceive or analyze or feel like people's treatment of you is either due to the fact that they are paying attention to you and they're making it about you, or they're ignoring you and that's the problem. It's very hard to decenter yourself when you don't have air in your birth chart. And as a matter of fact, if you do not have any of those three air signs occupied in your birth chart, if you were my client, we would be talking about the lack of privacy that you experienced growing up. No air in your birth chart means your experience was no privacy. And that could be for a lot of reasons. It can be because you were the only child and there was no buffer of privacy between you and your parents, nobody else for them to give the attention to. It could be because you had a bunch of siblings and you weren't allowed to have your own room. There wasn't space. And so you never really got privacy. It could be because your parents are narcissistic and they were obsessed and preoccupied with you and made you feel like if things were good, it's because you did something, and if things were bad, it's because you didn't do something or you did do something. I've seen very often lack of air in a birth chart show up as people's doors getting taken off the hinges. Sometimes it looks positive on the surface when you don't have air in your birth chart. It can look like all of the praise being heaped upon you, all of the attention that you've been given, all of the sense of you can do it and the support that you've been given when you don't have air in your birth chart. But it can have this flip side where you're constantly feeling pressured to live up to and live into the praise that has been heaped upon you. You've been the smart kid your whole life. And so when it comes to adulthood and you don't have any more schooling to matriculate through, you've gotten the PhD and the master's and you've done all of the fellowships and you've gotten this certificate and taken this course and so on. When there's no more praise to be reached for because you've done all of the things, your sense of self can really fall apart and it can push you in a really deep depression. And so it's important that we take advantage of these moments like right now where the sky is predominantly air, especially if you don't have any air in your birth chart. I call it catching the tools. So in this case, catching air means catching this opportunity to understand how important privacy is for you. And one of the definition of privacy beyond privacy in the sense of social media platforms and tech companies who are collecting, hoarding, and selling our data. Aside from the United States government and its many police institutions surveilling us and collecting data on us to indemnify us or to imprison us or to stalk us, whatever it may be, to harm us. That's privacy and surveillance too. And that's the most obvious definition of privacy and surveillance, which is I don't want you to know that about me. I don't want you to have that information about me. I don't want you to see me. I don't want you to look at me. I don't want you to know me. I don't exist to you. Right. And along with that is this idea of anonymity, right? But the version of privacy that I really want you to understand in this moment, particularly in its association with Aquarius and these eclipses in sidereal Aquarius and Leo, privacy as the freedom to not know and to not have to consider what somebody else thinks about you. Have you ever experienced a parent or someone in your life telling you about yourself, right? Telling you what you look like, telling you what your behavior is about. And like, yes, absolutely, we should all have safe places for people to tell us about ourselves. But also, there is such a thing as I don't want to or need to know what you think about me. Revealing myself to myself is saying, I am prioritizing my own thoughts about myself so that I can decide how I want to be known. As always, trans people are at the front line of the revolution because trans people are teaching us about self-determination. Trans people are teaching us the cost of self-determination. Trans people are revealing to us the real agenda of capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy, which is to strip you of your self determination and to make you believe that the version of you that exists inside your own mind is not real. And if you align with and embody the version of yourself that exists in your own mind, and you reject the self that is assigned to you and projected onto you, you will be subject to social death and you will be subject to physical death. The power of patriarchy and the power of whiteness and the power of capitalism, the primary way it uses it is to tell you who you are, to make you feel crazy for defining yourself for yourself, to designate you as insane. When you recognize and embody the Aquarius ideal, which is to know myself for myself. Many of us are told who we are before we have an opportunity to know ourselves. And it starts before we are even born. They use machines to determine your gender before you are born so that they can begin to project onto you expectations, norms, so that they can begin to shape you and mold you into the form of the gender that matches your genitals. We are stripped of self-determination before we are even born. We are projected onto. Self-determination is a protection from projection. It means that you don't have to identify with the way that people treat you. You don't have to identify with the labels that people assign to you. You don't have to identify with your socialization. You don't have to conform. And as a matter of fact, if you identify too much with how you're perceived, with what is projected onto you, you can really go deep into depression and or narcissism. I think I want to pause here. Is there something else I want to say? Let me say this before we move on to pull some cards. This series of eclipses tethers back to 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. And you can think about that time period in your life, right? I think 2017 is probably the most important year in terms of relevant astrological periods to now. And we know that that was when that Cheeto head, whose name shall not be named, emerged on the political scene and was elected president of the United States. And something that we miss, and something that I think is just like so incredibly important right now, figures who gain visibility, the individuals and institutions that get massive amounts of attention from the collective, making them the topic of the day, making them celebrities, making them politicians, making them, the news headlines. Those things that consume our attention are trying to tell us something about ourselves. That man, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, is an attention hole for the entire world because he's not. Let me make that really clear. He's not trying to tell us something about ourselves. I think this is fundamental and essential to the way the collective unconscious works, the collective psyche of humanity works. Those things that rise above as the center of our attention, the function is to tell us something about ourselves. In the same way that a dream is telling you something about yourself and something about your life, often in a way that is so cryptic that you don't understand it. But the more emotionally impactful the dream is, the more likely you are to pay attention to it. But because as a society, we don't really have a cultural framework of support, we don't have good cultural myths and structures around dreams, you just dismiss it or you take it literally. And it is the same thing with figures that rise above into this celebrity, into this deity like uh, uh, role in our society, that it's meant to reveal something to us that we must become conscious of as a species, as a humanity. So the question is, Donald Trump, who is sidereal Leo rising with Mars there and his sun right at the top of his chart, he was born at a full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio. What is being revealed to us about ourselves in this moment? And the danger here is you want to disassociate any similarity, any meaning. You don't want there to be any meaning. You want to completely dismiss it because it is important to you to maintain your sense of self. And part of how you do that is you say, I'm not like Trump. I'm nothing like those people. I'm nothing like ICE. I'm nothing like MAGA. I'm nothing like the right wings. I'm nothing like Charlie Kirk. I'm nothing like Eric Kirk. Ew, yuck. I'm nothing like those people. Well, actually, if you don't believe in the self-determination of children, you are just like them. If you don't believe that children should influence the way that adults perceive themselves, if you don't believe that children have a right to tell you about yourself, you are just like them. If you don't believe that trans people, including children, have a right to self-determination, to at the very least be called what they want to be called, you are just like them. Why? Not because I think that you have the same politics as them, not that I think you have the same morals as them. No. Because you think you have a right to use your eyes and your perception to tell other people who they are. You have surrendered your own right to self-determination, to know yourself for yourself, to identify yourself, to define yourself, to reshape gender into what it is that feels most natural and beautiful to you, to wear what you want to wear, to dress how you want to dress, to have the mannerisms that you want to have. You've surrendered your right to self-determination, and so you don't think anybody else should have it either. You are so afraid as a man of being perceived as gay, and you are trapped in the gender that was assigned to you before you could even fix your lips to tell somebody what you liked or disliked. You think you were born with those likes or dislikes? No. They were shamed and humiliated into you. So you keep who you really are a secret. And when you see somebody really being their self, it threatens your safety. Because you're like, oh my God, don't let the patriarchy see you self-determining. Don't let the patriarchy see you being authentic. They're going to hurt you. You have surrendered your own right to self-determination. And it started before you were even born. So when you see a child engaging in their right to self-determination, your impulse is to be violent. Your impulse is to mimic the same rituals of humiliation that were inflicted upon you. You say you should be seen, not heard. Know your place. You knew when somebody was mistreating you. You knew when somebody was talking to you crazy. You know what it felt like to be disrespected as a child. You know what it feels like to have to do things that feel wrong. You know what it's like to, from the earliest moments of your life, be humiliated and often abused into rejecting the truth of your body. You know what it's like for something to hurt and for everybody around you to tell you that it doesn't hurt. You know what it's like for something to hurt and everybody else around you to act like nothing's happening. You were conditioned to ignore yourself from the get-go. So when you see a trans person not ignoring themselves, you think they're crazy because you're participating in the colonial violence, the colonial social construct of sanity, insanity. You have the power to make someone sane. But instead, you use your power to strip people of their sanity. You have the power to make someone sane by being a witness to how they are seeing themselves, to how they are experiencing you. Why do you think so many mental illnesses have their roots in childhood trauma? Because we are ignoring our children into bipolar disorder, into clinical depression, into general anxiety. We are ignoring our children into schizophrenia. We are ignoring them from the very beginning. We align ourselves with the state and we say, you don't know who you are, and I have to tell you. And when you don't conform to who I tell you who you are, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to shame you. I'm going to humiliate you. You don't get any privacy. Don't close that door. Your feelings are invalid. Who are you to tell me about yourself? I'm the parent and you're the child. And sometimes it's not even that explicit. It's very subtle. Go to school, get up, sit down in that chair. No, you can't pee. No, you can't eat. You're hungry. I don't care. It's not lunchtime yet. You have to use the bathroom. Sorry, you used up all of your passes. You're having a bad mental health day. Too bad. Go sit in the classroom and do what I tell you to do. And as a matter of fact, I'm not even going to teach you anything useful. Stare at this screen all day. Pass this test. And if you don't pass, we are stripping them of agency and self-determination. And so it's no wonder that you think you're different than Charlie and Erica Kirk. You think you're different than Trump, right? But you're not. You are enforcing the same hierarchy that demands everyone from children to women to trans people to even yourself as a man, to even yourself as a woman, to prioritize how somebody else sees you over your own lived experience and your own experience of yourself. At this new moon solar eclipse in sidereal Aquarius, revealing myself to myself says, what happens? Who do you become? Who are you? When you recognize the ways that you prioritize the gaze of the capitalist class and your employers, men, the police, the state, the government. What happens when you recognize how much you have prioritized their judgment and their perception of you over your own? What is revealed to you about yourself when you actually allow yourself to see yourself and know yourself without worrying about someone else's judgment of you? When we talk about decentering men, this is actually specifically for men. To decenter men is to stop being so afraid of embarrassment and humiliation. Let's pull some cards. All right, I'm back with my cards. And we use the tarot as a form of divination. Divination is to observe the patterns of existence. That's what divination is to observe the patterns. And with tarot, we use symbols to help us observe and discern the patterns. What insight and guidance is available to us? What are the patterns that we are being beckoned to divine at this new moon, solar eclipse in sidereal Aquarius, where we are revealing ourselves to ourselves, revealing myself to myself? We've got the Queen of Cups on the bottom. And the Queen of Cups, I call it the being in your feelings card. It is talking about the appropriateness or inappropriateness of indulging oneself emotionally. It's talking about sometimes processing emotions, but I would say it's really about being in your body. And one thing that's really important about this eclipse and just this time period of astrology that we're in, mid-January of 2026 through basically the end of April represents one segment of astrological time where the sky is kind of gradually increasing its intensity and directing us towards Saturn in sidereal Pisces. So January, we started with our Capricorn stellium answering to Saturn in Pisces. Now we're at this new moon solar eclipse and the stellium in Aquarius through mid-March that's answering to Saturn in sidereal Pisces. And then from mid-March through the end of April, we will have a stellium in sidereal Pisces. And so the undercurrent, the tone, the cornerstone and foundation of what everything is really about right now is about connecting the dots that shape reality. And this relates to the Queen of Cups because Pisces is a water sign. And we've got all this water in the Queen of Cups. And water as a tool is about the body and bodily functions and our feelings. People say feelings aren't facts. Feelings are facts. Ignore the feeling of hunger and see how long you live. Ignore the feeling of pain and see how long you survive. Feelings are absolutely facts. Ignore the feelings of emotional pain and see how long you're able to function. Feelings absolutely are facts, right? And as I've talked about before, we are in a time where we've been in this extreme where everything is science and data. And it's been this very insidious way that the structures of capitalism, whiteness, and patriarchy have kind of trapped us in this never ending loop of you have to prove it with statistics. There has to be data. You need the numbers. It has to be it has to be studied at an academic institution, right? This way that only that which is quantifiable through the scientific method is real. And so we've tried to make everything scientific, even the mystical and the supernatural and spiritual. We feel like it's only meaningful and it's only real if we can prove it with the scientific method, if we have data to back it up. My lived experience as a Black woman and the Black maternal death rate, it's not a real thing that's happening until we have the data to back it up. You know, and this data is weaponized. This necessity and requirement of data has been weaponized against marginalized people, that we have to find the place in the brain where the pain is signaling in order for us to believe that you're in pain, right? If we don't have the data to back it up, this is not really happening to you. It's just a fluke, right? And a lot of this is about needing data or demanding data in lieu of actually believing people, and more importantly, in lieu of you believing yourself. So there's a way that you have to actually feel your feelings. There's a way that you actually have to be in your body to discern truth. And if we leap to, I need to convince you, if we leap to, I just need to collect data, no shade to anybody. And I'll have to admit that I'm not fully caught up on exactly what's been going on, but this whole thing about quantum physics, right? To me, I just can't get with it. I can't get with this constant obsession of centering the gaze of white institutions that use their power to determine what is real and what is not real, to determine what can be known and what cannot be known. I'm tired of this thing that, like, everything that is mystical, everything that is spiritual somehow has to be translated into this scientific language in order to make it legible and to make it real and to prove and say, see, look, African people have known all along, indigenous people have known all along. And it's just like, you do realize that there is no threshold of scientific evidence and data or proof of the fact that you were right, of the fact that what happened to you is real. There's not enough data that can ever be compiled to make whiteness give up its power, to make whiteness stop violently colonizing and dominating the entire world. There is no amount of data that is going to make men stop hurting people, including themselves. There is no amount of data that is going to force capitalism to redistribute the wealth, to stop stealing your wages, to stop exploiting the land. I don't care how many supernatural hurricane storms we have. I don't care how this is 100-year flood. Capitalism is never going to concede to the data. You're living it. I don't care how many people have died of COVID. Capitalism is never going to concede to the data. So why are you so focused on the data? This Queen of Cups is really revving and driving home that Saturn is in sidereal Pisces until February 2028. And in this time, we are connecting the dots that shape reality. We are not quantifying the dots. We're not calculating the dots. We're not doing them in order. We're not scientific methoding the dots. We are using the tool of our feelings, our intuition, our inner knowing. Because part of what Pisces teaches us is that you don't have to read the whole book to know what the book says. Because at the end of the day, capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy are what they are. And that's what's in the book. So if you think the book is going to tell you something else, let's pull the rest of these cards. We've got the 10 of Pentacles, and we've got the Two of Swords. So this Ten of Pentacles came up recently. I believe it was at the new moon in Capricorn. And if you're new to this podcast, this is a very divining moment, right? Because I just defined divination as observing the patterns and seeing what is revealed to us by observing the patterns. And so here's a pattern. 2 new moons in a row, we've got the Ten of Pentacles. So let's revisit some of the things that we talked about. That would have been what, episode 17, the new moon in sidereal Capricorn, planting seeds of resourcefulness to have enough. And I talked about how abundance is shared enoughness. Everything else is theft and hoarding. Abundance is not a personal condition or state of affluence. Abundance is when everyone has enough. You cannot manifest abundance for yourself. Because when you are in personal possession of enoughness, and there are people in this world, in your community, in your family, in your home that don't have enough, what do you think them people are going to do? Try to get some of what you have. And what are you going to do? Try to stop people from getting or taking what you have. Or you're going to designate yourself as great disperser of abundance. And so now you get to determine who gets to have some of what you have. And you get to determine who doesn't get to have some of what you have. This is the problem with philanthropy and charity. Philanthropy and charity only exist because there are a group of people who are hoarding everything. There's no need for charity. There are no poor people if there are no billionaires. Right? So this Ten of Pentacles card is reminding us of that. I also want to bring in this other definition or interpretation of the Ten of Pentacles, which for me is about good health. Right? It's about being in good health. It's about feeling good. And I think that's also something that has a shared component to it. It's also something that, you know, very early on at the beginning of the pandemic, we understood that every single person was an opportunity to stop the chain of transmission. Every single person was an opportunity to stop the spread of COVID. Because if we wanted to stop it, everybody had to participate. I think some of what is being illuminated here is these nuances of when something is collective and when something is individual. When something is in your personal power that you need to contend with, and when something is much larger than you. When something is, um, you know, a personal problem for you to solve, and when something is a collective problem for you to solve. And I think with the Queen of Cups and Ten of Pentacles, there is a how does my personal, subjective, emotional experience connect to the collective meaning? And this is something that I want to say too, that relying on your own intuition, being a pattern seeker or recognizing patterns is inherently alienating. And there's a certain way that you have to step out on a limb and believe yourself, even when the thing that you believe is not a part of the shared story or the shared belief system that we all have. There is, I think another message here is about the more there's this concept in writing where people think that like you have to write to be broadly appealing. And so you don't want to be too specific because you want the most amount of people to relate to it. But the opposite is actually true, that the more specific you are, the more detailed and subjective you are in your storytelling or even in honoring your experience, the more you hone in on what is really true for you, the more people relate, the more people connect. Right? We're in this time period where it's like a great homogenization of culture, and everyone's getting the same plastic surgery. Everyone makes their teeth look the same. Everyone wears the same hairstyle. Everyone wears the same clothing. And everybody's just doing everything the same. But isn't it interesting that as we are like the least diverse we've ever been, right? Even blackness is being flattened by social media when blackness is really regional, and there are so many subcultures of blackness all over not only America but the world. But it's I like I was watching a K-drama today, and I watched one of the characters do the fist bump explosion, and I'm just like, wow. People copying black people all over the world, right? So crazy to me. I mean, that's just like crazy. But it's not lost on me that at this moment where we are so afraid of being our unique self, that we are more disconnected from each other than ever. We are more lonely than ever. Even though we're all using the same language and the same slang, even though we're all wearing the same clothes, even though we're all doing the same thing to our teeth, the same thing to our hair, even though, we're policing each other into conforming in every single way possible. And yet we are the most lonely we have ever been in human history. We are longing for community more than we ever have. We have less privacy than we have ever had. All of your purchasing behavior, your scrolling behavior, your conversations, what you like and what you don't like on social media, what you say on social media, the store you walk into, the parking lot you parked your car in, the street you drove down, when you checked your mail, when you every single thing about you is being surveilled and compiled. You are seen everywhere all the time. And you are the least known you've ever been to yourself and to others. Really being authentic and honest to ourselves and our feelings, being authentic to the things that we intuit and know, really leaning into knowledge that is not shared knowledge, but that is personal knowledge, that it's coming from our relationship with our own intuition and body. Yes, it is alienating. Yes, it feels lonely, but it's actually the way to connection and community. It is the last card here. We've got this Two of Swords. And remember, we're in this period that's all about privacy. When we get to, I would say, from July through the end of the year, it's the surveillance piece. Now, of course, we're talking about privacy because we are being surveilled, right? But privacy in this moment, on a very personal level, I want you to remember this, that privacy in a very personal way is about freedom of having to consider what other people think about you. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear. Don't praise me and don't criticize me. right? Don't praise me, don't criticize me, don't judge me. I don't tell me. I don't need to know, because this is a time for me to reveal myself, to know myself, to also uncover the ways that what I thought was me was really thoughts that I'd internalized from the way that I've been treated. If you don't have the 2026 Sidereal Astrology Guide, you're really tripping. And I know I don't do a good job of explaining exactly what it is, but here's a moment for you to see what's actually going on. So I'm bringing this up because I want to read the reflection questions that I have for this time, right? But I'm going to read just this little summation that I wrote at the top here. A major theme illuminated by this year's astrology is privacy. At best, privacy is freedom from having to prioritize others' perception of you, a requirement for self-determination. At worst, it's not existing at all to other people, invisibility. The very first question that I ask here is, what changes in your relationship to media and social media might be required at this moment? Meta just said that it's going to be using facial recognition software in their Meta glasses. So if you have Meta glasses, you are participating in state surveillance, because the data that is coming through the lenses on your glasses is being compiled by the state to surveil and inflict violence on us. TikTok's terms of service under its new ownership may not be that different from what they were before, but now they are directly in the hands of the United States government, which has been very clear about its use of Americans' data to not only surveil them, but to police them, to incarcerate them, to terrorize them. What changes in your relationship to media and social media might be required in this moment when state surveillance is at an all-time high and only increasing? Where what you say, the United States government just sent subpoenas to Google and Meta, demanding that they hand over the data of people who have criticized ICE. What changes in your relationship to media and social media might be required at this moment? 3 more questions. What did your parents or other adults in your life tell you about who you are, good, bad, and neutral, before you got the chance to know yourself for yourself? What of those things have you come to embrace because it resonates? How can you lean more into those parts of yourself? And finally, in light of your growing self awareness, what of those things is it time to let go of? The last thing I want to say really quickly about this Two of Swords, rather. This is a card of withholding judgment. And it's important, as we're doing the work of self-determination, that we withhold judgment, because often the judgments that we project and impose, even on our own feelings and even on our own thoughts, are not coming from us. They're judgments we've internalized. We think we're doing just what's logical. We think we're operating in facts. We think we're in reality. Reality is a social construct. And if the Epstein files are telling us anything, it's that whatever you think is factual and true and just the way things are is something that was conjured up in the minds of white men. It is something that real white people who we know the names of colluded to create. And if you want any chance of change, you absolutely have to engage in the work of self-determination. And we have an incredible historical precedent of what that looks like. Whether it's trans people, whether it's Black people and the slave rebellions that occurred as soon as slavery existed. Slave rebellions weren't something that enslaved people decided to do later. They were rebelling from the get-go. which is why the laws got more and more violent. Oh, y'all rebelling? Now you can't speak your own language. Oh, y'all rebelling? Now you can't practice your own religion. Oh, y'all rebelling? Now you can't use drums. Oh, now you're rebelling? Oh, now you can't even leave the plantation unless I tell you to. Oh, now you're rebelling? We lionize and look back on these things. It's like, wow. We look back at the civil rights movement. We look back at the women's suffrage movement. We look back at these things and we're saying, wow, and the piece we're missing is self-determination. And it's the hardest one to do because self-determination is asking you to resist and question social norms. It's asking you to say, hey, are you sure gender is a binary? Are you sure sexuality is a binary? Are you sure that you're heterosexual? Are you sure you're a man? Are you sure you're a woman? Are you sure? Are you sure you're the bad person because you've been designated a felon? How can you step outside these labels and norms that are projected onto you to reveal yourself to yourself so that you can embody the ideal of Aquarius, which is to know yourself for yourself? That is all for today. I'm Dana Lynn Knuckles, also known as the People's Oracle, and this is the Divination for Liberation podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. Remember, we're on YouTube and we're on all streaming platforms. Make sure that you subscribe. Please comment. Tell me how you're liking this, how you're not liking this. Make sure you share it with friends. We're trying to get everybody up on the Divination for Liberation podcast. I just checked the COVID wastewater data, and the Midwest is still in a surge. Minnesota is really bad right now. Cases are very high in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, I believe Michigan. And so while overall COVID is low relative to where it was this time in previous years, there are specific places where COVID is very high. I know someone personally who just had another COVID infection living in the Midwest. So COVID is still going around. Wear your mask. Please be mindful of being in indoor spaces where ventilation is questionable. You can still stop transmission by wearing a mask in public places. You can still avoid COVID by wearing a mask. You can still avoid COVID, or at least keep other people from getting it, by not going around other people when you're sick. Even if you don't think it's COVID, but you've got a runny nose and a sore throat and all of those things, you don't want to give people that either. And I don't know when it became okay to just like have an infectious disease and just like be around people and give it to other people. Like, WTF. All of that being said, I think I'm trying to think about what the next several months of COVID is going to be like. Um, the other side of May is when I am most optimistic about an incredibly dramatic decrease in circulating COVID. Again, overall, right now, the only year where COVID transmission or wastewater was lower than it is now was the very first year. So, all things considered, circulating COVID is on the decline in the bigger picture. But specifically, there are still places that have an incredible amount of COVID circulating. So we're kind of out of sync as a country, where the perimeter of the country had a huge surge in the late summer and fall, and the Midwest did not get a surge then. And now, since very late December, I would say early mid-January, the Midwest and the center part of the country has had a lot of COVID circulating. Overall, My prediction is that on the other side of May, there will be a dramatic fall off of circulating COVID. There might be a, a relatively low surge. Hold on, let me tell you exactly when that is. Yeah, there might be a relatively low surge that peaks around the early part of May, but so that means increasing in the perimeter of the country, I would say, West Coast, Southwest, South, Southeast, Northeast, and the East Coast, that surge, you know, uh, let's say by April, that will start increasing. I don't think it's going to be a huge surge, but it will peak early part of May. And by the time we get through May into June, there should be a dramatic fall off, which for me means circulating COVID across America will likely be at an all time low. So, for those of you who are COVID safe, COVID realist, who still know that you don't want that thing in your brain, and if you've got it, you don't want it again, that information is for you. And for the rest of you, I hope you learned something new. I will see you soon. In a couple of weeks, we will be at a full moon lunar eclipse in sidereal Leo. I'll come back and we'll pull some cards and we'll talk astrology and make all of these connections. I hope you're taking care of yourself, and I'll see you soon. Bye.